Good afternoon. I'm Pam Lippitt with the Hill Street Group, and today I'm here with Michael Zwick, and you're going to learn about two businesses and actually opening a business during pandemic. So we'll get to that in a little bit, but I just want to remind anyone who's either watching this live or watching it later, if you could comment below of where you're watching from and give us a little information. If you have any questions, we'll go back and follow up and we will answer them for you, because this is going to be a really interesting topic. I've known Michael for a few years, but I don't think we've seen each other probably in 3 or 4 years. So so it's a good time to catch up. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Great to be here, Pam. Yes, it has been a while. One of the things I'd like to say that I've made a point to do during these last almost 6 months now is to use some of the downtime I have to reach out to people I haven't talked to in a while, and to also establish new relationships. So a little bit about myself. I'm originally from Michigan. I went to college and law school in New York after moving back to Michigan. After law school, I should say, I moved back to Michigan, practiced law for a little while. And then I was asked to join a company that very much in its infancy called Assets International. And Assets International, which is still around 19 years later, is a private investigation agency. And what we do is we find assets that are sitting in government treasuries, in court proceedings, whatever, that are just waiting for their owners to claim them. And then we, for the most part, we'll go track down those owners and we'll get them their money. Also, some of those owners can be large corporations, Fortune 100 companies, large universities, who might come to us and say, "Hey, we know we have money out there. Can you get it for us?"
How about those of us who dream we have money out there?
Keep dreaming.
That's about it.
And maybe one day we'll actually have something for you.
Okay.
And then, as you mentioned, we just started a new company, which is called InheritMore. And the idea for that came last year when a client of ours came to us, a former client, a large nonprofit, came to us and said, we got a letter from this probate court in Ohio that this woman died. She left her entire estate to us, and we know nothing about her, what her assets were. Can you find her assets for us? So it's kind of a different twist, because now we're asked to proactively go find assets before we knew there was anything out there. So
I was involved with a nonprofit for many years, and one day, literally, a letter like that came to the nonprofit, didn't list heirs, and we couldn't even figure out how this person connected to the organization.
Right.
I wish you were around then. After much work, it ended up that person's sister in Florida had heard someone speak a number of years ago and was so impressed that they left like a quarter of their estate, which was about $250,000, by the way.
Nice.
To the organization. So, of course, there was a little bickering among relatives, whatever, but the organization still ended up with a lot of money. So you just never know what's out there, right?
Right. So that's exactly what happened. When this happened, as an entrepreneur, I said to myself, is this a common situation, or is this kind of a black swan? So I started doing talking to people, which is one of the most important things you can do in life, including in business, is be out there talking to people.
Right.
And I started talking to probate attorneys, and I said, "Is this a common situation where someone walks in your door and says, I'm the heir to a estate, or I have to be the executor, but I know nothing about this person's finances, or I just don't have the time, or I don't have the emotional energy. I'm grieving. I need someone to do all the work of finding and tracking down the assets." And we realized that with our parent company, Assets International, already has all those skills. We know where to find assets. We know how to deal with the banks, the insurance companies, all those different entities. So we said, let's start. We recently launched.
Yeah. You there? Everything good?
I have to apologize. I just
lost sound. I'm going to switch over. Just if you give me 1 second, please.
No problem.
I really, really apologize for this. I'm embarrassed.
You know what? Here's the thing. We're in the middle of, I'm counting. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Okay. It's not even sunny after this hot summer. And we're operating on places that we didn't normally operate on. And this is live. So I'm fine. That's the whole point of this, is to be live and not scripted.
I'm good to go now. I've been saying for a while, if you remember about 2 years ago, that reporter in CNN who is in South Korea, and his kids ran into the room while he was reporting, and then his wife came in to get the kids out. And I said, he's the patron saint for all of us now.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting you believe in patron saints, but whatever. That's a whole nother topic. That's seen
a figurative term.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny because I've seen, this is totally off topic, but I have seen more people during the pandemic reference like it's up to God, who otherwise consider themselves atheists.
Yeah.
So, we got to grab a straw where we grab a straw, I think. And so I totally get it. So tell me about something that people love examples because like I said, we all dream that one day, there's two parts. One is we dream one day something will fall on our head and it will be a big bucket of money. And two, sadly, I've lost both my parents already, but I'm of the age where many people are in this position right now. And I know it's really, really, I think daunting is the word I would look for, because you can't even hold your head up. And then, someone says, well, you have to give us a death certificate. And that causes you to cry for an hour. So it's like, it is challenging.
Right. Which is exactly what we are addressing with this new company. And fortunately, my parents are both. I'm almost 50 years old, and fortunately, both my parents are still alive. But I look around at most of my contemporaries, and almost all of them have lost one, if not both, parents at this point. And when it comes, for everyone, the natural order usually, as you parents, go, is that someone, say in my position, I've got a very busy life with these businesses, as well as the business that I work on with my wife on the side as a weight loss and wellness coach. Three kids, who are between ages 9 and 13. Community involvement. I got a lot going on. So, if I was in those situations, I would like, help, please, someone help me with this.
Right. Just not even help. It's like, here, take this and call me when you're done.
Exactly. So it's partly the emotional aspect of it and partly the time aspect of it. And it's also just the expertise is you might not necessarily know where to look for everything. Right. You might say, yeah, okay, I know my father had an account at whatever bank, and I know he was a big fan of buying Coca-Cola stock, but you might not know about that other brokerage account that he owned, or that he had a safe deposit box at some other bank or something like that. And I can't guarantee we'll find everything, but we will be, frankly, a lot more thorough than your regular Joe will be.
Right. So, okay. So I had asked you to tell me like an amazing story. Like, what's your favorite go-to story for either business?
So I've got many. One of my favorites was a story where we found about $250,000 sitting in a county treasury in some very rural county in Texas, about 2 hours south of Dallas, where oil and gas company had drilled, and they couldn't find the guy who owned the oil and gas rights. And we just started doing some research, and we found that the owner had passed away back in the 60s from a drug overdose. He left a young wife, and who was pregnant at the time with her only child. And we found this only child 40 plus years later, living in the backwoods of Arkansas in some mobile home. And we were able to really, change his life. And of course, he didn't believe it at first, which I totally get.
Right.
I wouldn't believe it too. But
it wasn't one of those things where you send us $5,000 and we'll just give you the money after that.
Yeah, we're very clear with both our businesses is we always work on a contingency basis. So we're only getting paid from the value that we provide when we provide it. So we'll never ask people to pay us up front for information. We'll never ask them for a credit card. We say when you get the money in, we will then get paid our percentage. Great. And we make sure that they understand that. Make sure they understand that we are a licensed and bonded private investigation agency. So we make sure that we want to put people's minds at ease. So another story that I really like is we had a case where a couple, the facts are not happy. A couple in Northern California was found dead in their home. Basically, they just, one died, and then the other one, who was was not mobile.
Oh man!
You could say very sad. And we were asked, a distant relative came to us and said, "Hey, we don't know anything about this. Can you look into the assets?" So we started digging. We found this bank account, that bank account. We found, just as we were about to wrap things up, we found that the couple owned a mobile home in Nevada. So that was worth another $100,000 they were able to put into the estate.
Wow.
Yeah. So. Yeah. So it's very rewarding.
Yeah.
We've had, like I said, we've had Fortune 100 companies as clients, but we've also had people who are literally homeless, who, when we get them that money, they're able to actually get an apartment, get off the streets, or people have started new businesses. So it's really rewarding work when we see the benefits that people are able to get from our work.
So I should really connect you with Lori Bloom from Gracefully Graying. Lori was on the show. I think she was maybe even the first person who did the small business spotlight with me. And Gracefully Graying is a website that has a lot of resources for seniors and to help with these kind of things. And okay, sadly, if you ask the Corona people, the COVID people, I'm getting closer toward that kind of that age, depending on who you talk to. And so seniors look and act a lot different than we imagine seniors to look and act, right? And so there may be a place for you to find a little niche and a little spot with them too to advertise. I think that could be really helpful spot for you.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. The people that we that generally come to us or refer business to us, especially for the new business, are probate attorneys, clergy members, funeral directors, people who are counseling people who have recently lost loved ones.
Right.
And if in one case or another, it comes up that how am I going to pay for this? How am I going to deal with this process? So they will turn to us to say, hey, can you help these people find the assets that belong to their loved ones?
Yeah. And I think that might be a good spot for you to find, for people. I think the users of that site would be very interested in what you're doing.
I'll have to check that out.
That's how I'm kind of framing this, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely sounds good. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, and I love connecting people. And we'll just give out a shout out to Lori Bloom because she's a great graphic designer and we've worked together. She said 100 years on a call yesterday, and I told her no, only 80. So it's good. But no, she's a very, very, very good graphic designer, and this is a new thing she's working on as well. I think you're right. One of the things that we had either the time or the desperation or the strength to deal with during this pandemic is kind of figuring out next steps and figuring out how we move from here. So you think you're going to keep, I know you have, for Assets International, you have a number of employees. Are you going to be keeping office space? Have you made decisions?
So that was the discussion I just had with my administrative assistant yesterday. I was able, it was her birthday, so I brought her some birthday cake, and we're sitting outside talking for a while. We would love to get out of our lease. First of all, I think we already had a little more space than we needed, and a lot of people were already working remotely part-time to begin with. And now certainly there are, I'd say, half my staff goes in, but even they are kind of stagger their times,
Right.
whereas the rest of us are working from home full time.
Mm-hmm.
So we definitely don't need the same amount of space per person right now. But we're in a lease, and we're in our lease for now.
So you have to promote yourself to people who could get out of their lease, but just need a little bit of space to give your extra space to. So exactly. They say it's going to be one way or the other. Either people are going to downsize, or if they want to bring everyone in, they're going to have to actually expand to be further away. It's right.
I saw an article yesterday where from Inc. magazine, where it was a kind of a debate between the school of thought that you can do everything remotely, and the school of thought like, no, you having people together in the same room is absolutely critical to it. And I can see both sides of it. So,
I mean, all things being equal, of course it's better to be in person, but if I've noticed correctly, all things aren't being equal right now. So it's
nothing is what it was a year ago.
Yeah. And it's interesting. We're having this discussion kind of about assets and money and how you protect things. And, we're in the place where we're not only protecting money, we're protecting people. Yeah. And I was watching yesterday the schools, the universities that have been in session 2 or 3 weeks and now are telling the kids to go home. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking, that's great if you're local and your parents can now take a day or two off work to get you home. Right. But there's so many people, like you went to New York for school. There's so many people, when they're figuring out the cost of college, they've already allocated how many times they can go home. Mm-hmm. And how that's going to work. And for many kids who go out of state, especially on scholarship, their parents say to them, go out of state, better yourself. That's fabulous. But we can only bring you home once or twice during the year.
Yep.
And so, we're just like kind of throwing these kids to the wind and saying, oh, tomorrow you need to go home. Right. I just don't understand where that's coming, how that's working. But I digress, as I want to do, because it's my show. So I just want to say, I want to ask a question. I am going to assume that you will be happy to connect with more people on LinkedIn. And here's your address. Is that okay with you?
Absolutely. I'm a big, like I said before, I'm a big believer in talking to people. I love to connect with people. I think that not only business, but the world is a better place when we're able to start talking to each other and seeing how can we help each other. And I've also found that sometimes some of the ideas that we've had in our company, I don't want to say that I've had, that our company has had and grown from, are with people who are in areas that have nothing to do with what we do, who will ask a question and say, hey, can you do this? Or why aren't you doing this? Because I look at it as I'm pretty entrepreneurial. I'm pretty open-minded about things and chase a lot of crazy ideas. But at the same time, I still have some constraints about, my tunnel vision of what my company does. And sometimes it takes an outsider who has no idea and no understanding of what I do to ask a very innocent question that makes me say, I wonder if I can do that.
Well, okay. I'm a firm believer in saying yes and figuring it out.
Yeah.
Within those constraints, I get that part. But on the whole, if you ask me to learn something or do something, if it relates to business, I'll say yes and figure it out. Okay, I'm not going skydiving, but if I need to, we were looking at something I couldn't quite figure out. We were streaming on Facebook, but through a back end called StreamYard. And I have to figure out how to do a couple things, and I should have done it earlier. But by next time, I'll figure it out. It's a new piece that StreamYard just added a couple things because everybody's looking for the next thing. Though overall, I really like the the service. It's been pretty good, and I'm pretty picky about what I pay for, so I must like it. So here's I have a couple questions. We're going to go back to the topic. First of all, I'm throwing how to connect with you and the companies underneath here. And yesterday I posted something about links and company links that aren't secure. So the first thing I looked at is are your websites secure? And I was glad to see they are. Yes. So those are the things I look for. So this is how to also there's lots of ways to get in touch, but on the top of your new website, it says responsible for an inheritance and don't know where to begin. So tell us where to begin. Like if I'm out, I actually have a friend who lost his second parent maybe 2 weeks ago. And I can tell by his Facebook posts, and I know there, our assets there. I can tell by his Facebook posts, he is where I was in the overwhelm. So when you're overwhelmed, what do you do?
I say the first thing you got to do is to realize that it's a big job. Prepare yourself for just how much time and energy this is going to suck out of you. The second thing is be prepared. Get yourself not only mentally prepared, but start making a checklist of what you have to do. There are a lot of little things that you have to do to get started. Ordering copies of the death certificate. And actually, I just did a post on LinkedIn just this morning about that very topic of when you get the death certificate, you got to make sure the facts are correct on it, because if they're not, then that can mess you up. You got to go through the house. You have to go through the residence. And a lot of people, there are a lot of paperwork involved. People, say our age, whose parents, they might have lived in the same house for 50, 60 years.
Right.
They might have a lot, and some people. I happen to love pack rats because I love people.
I should have invited you over.
I love what was that?
I should have invited you over when I emptied my parents' house. Go ahead.
Yeah, I love people who hold on to stuff because it provides us that documentation to find out where things might be. It's not when we do our work, we don't necessarily just rely on what we find in the house of account statements and tax returns, but they are definitely, they could be a gold mine at times for stuff. And so, it's kind of going through there and also think to yourself, okay, like what hobbies did my father or mother have? It could be, was the person a big traveler? Because if so, they might have, frequent flyer miles or hotel points that are worth something. Technically speaking, those are not transferable. They die with the owner, but most airlines and hotel companies will allow a transfer to the family members so they can use those points or sell them. So it's really kind of doing a full, going back to the beginning when I was talking about that nonprofit that called us about this woman who left her estate. We started by doing sort of like a profile of the decedent and said, okay, so I looked at, where she worked, what she did for a living. So that already led me to realize, okay, here's where I go to find out if she has any last paycheck coming to her, where she might have a pension, get her HR records, because that might tell us about where she might have had her direct deposit going. So that will tell us where her checking account was. She owned her home, so we could possibly get the mortgage application and find out what assets she had when she. So you got to kind of look at the basics, and then you got to start digging into it. And one of the things you really got to be ready for is dealing with all the bureaucracy.
Right.
Because, like I said, all these records that we got from, her, in this case, the woman worked for the state of Ohio. You can imagine it's a large organization.
Right.
She banked at Chase, a national bank. So it takes a lot to get through to the right person who can even answer your questions, let alone tell you what paperwork you need to fill out in order to get those assets transferred to the heirs.
So I'm a knitter. So what I'm thinking of is like, you spend your whole life basically knitting this project, right?
Yeah.
And then you come in and start unraveling it thread by thread.
Right. Start
You're
pulling the
really,
thread to it.
yeah, you're really almost deconstructing someone's life for the good, not for the bad, but for the good and for the good of their heirs. Okay, so what advice do you give to people who don't want their children? It's good that they need you, but what advice do you give to people who are overwhelmed and don't want their heirs in that position? Because people must do that.
The big piece of advice is to prepare a list, some sort of inventory of all the assets that you own. You don't necessarily have to share it with your loved ones. You don't necessarily have to put dollar amounts. Frankly, I had a conversation with my father recently, and I said, listen, I don't want to know how much what the accounts are worth. I said, but just give me a list of where everything is,
right.
So that when the time comes, and may be many, many years from now, I'll know which banks to call, which brokerage firms to call, and what the account numbers are. I said, just so at least just prepare that, because if you don't want to give it to me, give it to someone that you
like more than me.
What was that?
That you like more than me.
Exactly. I know, like I said, my father gave me this. I haven't even looked at it. I mean, right. I looked at it just to see if I can read it, because if I doesn't have the best handwriting. But I didn't actually look at it, and there's no dollar amounts on there anyways, and it's not my business.
Right.
So it's just, if you want to give it to your attorney, your accountant, whoever, to somebody that will have it. Also, if you want to make sure that there's not going to be that fighting over who gets what, have a will.
Yeah.
If someone dies without a will, their heirs will still inherit everything. But if your intention is to give money to a charity or to a relative that's not necessarily an heir, for example, if you have cousins, but you have one particular nephew that you really like and want him to get some money, you can't just say, hey, nephew, when I die, you're getting $10,000, because that's not binding. Right. That is legally binding. So you want to make sure you have a will, and I would say, do not do it yourself. I know it's popular to use LegalZoom or whatever. Spend the extra bit of money and hire an attorney and get it done right, because those online things are one size fits all. And there is no such thing as one size fits all for legal stuff, especially for estate planning. And I used to practice law. And I and any other attorneys practice law can tell you horror stories of people who said they wanted to save themselves a few $100s and use a form that they found online, and it wound up costing them or their heirs many, many times that in legal fees to undo the mess, and not only the mess of it, but also taxes. You hear of some of these celebrities who didn't have a proper estate plan, and their estate got hit for millions of dollars in taxes, which wouldn't have happened had they spent $5,000, which is, I'm not here nor whether someone wants to pay that much. $5,000 is a lot less than the millions of dollars in taxes that their heirs now have to pay.
It's kind of like I've bought a house and refinanced the house, and I took an attorney with me both times. I used an attorney, and especially when I bought the house, and people said to me, or when they're buying a house, they're like, I don't need an attorney. I'll just read it myself. And I say to them, you are making the biggest purchase of your life until you buy your next house.
Yes.
So you're buying, let's say, a $200,000 or $300,000 piece of property, and you don't want to spend $300 or $400 to make sure it's right. And I watched the attorney read the documents, and I'm like, how do you turn the pages so fast? And he said, I know exactly what I'm looking for, and you never will. So those preparations are really, really important. I'll tell you, I have a funny, not so funny, I guess ironic, funny story. When my grandparents came from Russia independently, but my grandmother came when she was between 20 and 23 till she got here after the First World War, after the pogroms. And when she passed away in 1979, she lived in an apartment in Oak Park. And my mom and uncle, who are now both gone, went through her house and her apartment. And my mother always said, I don't know why we didn't keep the apartment an extra month. What was the difference? We should have like given ourselves time to breathe, but we didn't. Literally, as they were walking out with the last sweep, something caught my mom's eye on the shelf in the window at the top of the bathtub. Because they had pulled, and she went in there, and there was a wadded up bundle of bills. And oops, did I lose you? There you are.
No, I'm here.
Yeah, even though my grandmother had been here 60 plus years, was an American, felt fully embodied in the American experiment, they then found money hidden throughout the apartment, cash.
Right.
And it was that, what if I have to run away in the middle of the night again? So sometimes that's why when you said there are treasure troves in houses, there are more treasure troves than you know.
Yes, that was because I know my mother found that when my grandfather passed away, and he passed away about 25 years ago, is I don't know if it was my grandmother or grandfather, had like little things of a little bit of money in all different pockets of coats and stuff like that, because in case you grab a coat and you want to make sure you have a few, this back obviously before ATMs and debit cards,
right,
was like, if my grandparents had to grab a coat and go out somewhere, they wanted to make sure they have money. So they always have like little bits of money. But, I always say, you got to make sure that you really look thoroughly. I mean, there are people who hide stuff in books. So you got to like kind of shake shake all the books out to make sure there's no money, especially if you're planning on giving away or selling those. Every so often you hear those stories of somebody who buys a piano at a garage sale and opens it up and finds a shoebox full of $100 bills that the person hid there. They
did find well over $1,000, and this is quite a long time ago. So but yeah, it's. I guess everyone's mentality is a little bit different, and your theory of like on the bottom of that list, that's probably not a question you asked. Is there money hidden in the house?
Yeah,
but it's probably a question you should ask.
Exactly.
Because if your grandfather did it, one of your parents are doing it too.
Yeah, especially of that age. My grandparents were born in the early 20s, so they were children of the Depression. So people were of a certain age or socioeconomic background are going to have that always want to have something on hand just in case mentality.
Right. It wasn't such a bad thing.
No.
We'd all be in a much better place today if we had that theory going. So,
exactly.
All right. Well, it is about 25-2. We've been on here for about 35 minutes. So we're going to start to wrap up. I don't see any comments right now, but I'm just going to remind everyone that if you are watching this in the replay, make sure that you let us know if you have any questions. We'll be bouncing this out all over the place later. And so feel free to comment or reach out to one of us. I'm trying. So I will tell you, I'm trying to call this my pandemic positive response because there's so much negative, and I'm trying to find that little bit of a rainbow and pot of gold. So if you have a small business and you want to be featured on Hill Street Group's Spotlight on Small Business, just reach out. You can find me as well on LinkedIn, Pamela Lippitt, and my LinkedIn business page, and just reach out and connect. So final thoughts today, Michael Zwick.
One of the things I've found in this situation the last 6 months, and I've commented is that in every situation, whether it's a pandemic, an economic downturn, whatever, you can still find those people who are finding a way to succeed. Example I gave when we were talking before we went on air that I was just in Disney World with my family.
And I rode my husband too, yeah.
and I had all over the ground, because they were very big on social distancing, were these markers that were like kind of taped down to the ground that said, maintain social distance, stand here until the person ahead of you goes. And I said, there've got to be thousands and thousands of these things, and put on the tables that are, I'm thinking to myself, somebody had to make those, and somebody had to sell those to Disney, probably at a nice profit. And here's someone who, I have no idea what company makes those. I have no idea what they're doing, but my guess is they were probably in a business that probably saw a downturn in other business, but said, hey, here's something we can do here's something, make lemonade out of these lemons that we've been given.
Right.
You look at the hand sanitizer people, their business go through the roof right now.
I'm just sad I didn't invest in the people who make plexiglass dividers.
Yep, exactly. So
I used to say it was the Orange Barrel guys I should have invested in, but
yeah, well, here in Michigan, that's an annual thing.
Yeah.
So, like I said, especially outside, it's one of the things that I found interesting during these last few months is when the pandemic first started, and not a lot of my work, but a good portion of my focus for our legacy company, Assets International, is dealing with large entities, like say corporations, universities, or whatever. And I was thinking to myself, they're not going to want to take my calls. They're too busy dealing with such major issues. They're recovering even millions of dollars. It's just not their big thing when you're talking about a multi-billion-dollar corporation. And what I quickly found out is that, yes, there are those people who are running around like they got their hair on fire and they can't focus on anything. But then we have a large Fortune 100 company that we've been doing work with for a while. And throughout most of the previous 6 months, I hadn't heard from our contact at all. I didn't know what was going on. I don't know if they were moving those up. Literally, early May, after they'd just blown off a call, a few weeks later, I get a call or email saying, Michael, I'm really sorry. We've been really busy the last few months. No mention of COVID. We've been really busy the last few months. Can we set up a call to kickstart things and get things going again? And sure enough, we did. And, made me realize, the world is still turning. Businesses are still have to make a profit. They still, and, even ones that aren't for-profit entities still have bills to pay. So the world's still going. If your job or your business has been affected, there are other ways to do things. You got to kind of just take a different look at things.
Well, I will say, I think, especially with the new company, it seems to me that while your service is paper and pen and getting everything officially done, what you're really doing is also being a comforting voice and face to people who are in distress. And I think you're doing a really good job with that. And putting everything else aside, right now, when you look at how many obituaries there are and how many things are going sideways, to know that you've entrusted yourself to someone who cares is probably the most important thing you can do. And it is clear that you care about your clients. I mean, that goes without saying. It's very clear. So with that, I want to thank you for your time. Hopefully we won't be strangers as much as we are. We'll see each other one day in person. And I wish you luck on continuing. I have someone I'm going to send this to send over to you right now, and I'm going to connect you. So that's the world we live in. We connect people. So good luck to you. Thank you for being on Spotlight on Small Business. And we will see everyone here again soon. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure. Have a great day.